Hi, my name is Karen Fabian and I'm the founder of Bare Bones Yoga, and I'm here today to give you a brief tutorial on some red flags to look for while you're teaching yoga. And these red flags all are in the area of anatomy, and all of the content I'm going to be sharing with you today comes from my own anatomy manual called the Bare Bones Yoga Guide to Anatomy. And this is something that I wrote over many years. It's been refined through putting it into practice as I've taught teachers the anatomical aspects of yoga, and really struggled to find a text that had all the information I wanted in one place. You know, there's a lot of information out there about anatomy, and if you're a yoga teacher, you may have a lot of books and, you know, maybe have gone to some trainings. But I find one of the things that's oftentimes lacking is how to apply the information to your teaching. So I really wrote this guide with that focus in mind, and have a pretty specific methodology as to how I break down the anatomy, focusing on the key aspects and then getting down to brass tacks in terms of how to apply it to your teaching. So today I'm going to go over with you some of the red flags that you may have seen as you've been teaching yoga, and we're going to go into some of the reasons why these can be problematic for people in terms of the anatomy. You know, because that's one of the other things. Many times you may pick up things through training or working with different teachers without really an understanding as to why these things are the way they are, or why they are taught the way they are, or why they might be of concern. And so I really want to shed some light on that to give you a complete picture. So the first thing is allowing the knee to go past the heel when you're in different lunges. And so this sometimes comes up in a shape like Warrior One, right? Or even if you were to do a low lunge, something like this, right? And this action of allowing the knee to go very far past the heel. You can also see it in something like a crescent lunge, right? If I were to do something like that. And so the concern here is related to the quadriceps and the tendon that is the kind of home base or the converging point of all the quadriceps, which are responsible for straightening the knee or extension, knee extension. And so all of the heads of the quadriceps, the four of them, insert on the patellar tendon. And so this tendon, you can kind of think of it like one of those old school clotheslines where there's the pulley and then there is the clothesline itself. And the tighter the tension on that clothesline, the more tension there is at that junction of the clothesline over the pulley. And so if you apply that idea to the knee, the further my knee goes, the tighter that potentially becomes. And so again, we're just looking to create length and strength without overdoing any movement. So that's kind of the first piece there. The second shape of concern is allowing the lower back to collapse in. And we see this also in something like a crescent lunge, where people oftentimes lift the arms up and then sit in the lower back. So if we think about, you know, there are obvious joints in the body like the shoulder and the hip, but all of the vertebra in the back are obviously joints as well because they're places of movement. So these facet joints that are between the vertebra, we want to, you know, not overdo movement there. So we want to keep the natural curve of the spine, the lumbar spine curving in, without overdoing it and creating that lordotic curve or sway back. So we can cue people to engage the rectus abdominis, which runs from the sternum to the pubic bone, and really pull inward there to help kind of decrease that concavity, that sway back. All right, and then the next one is hyperextending the knees. So if we lock out in our knee, we, you know, can potentially do some damage to the knee joint itself. Locking out can be kind of a obvious way to find our balance, but working a little bit of bend allows us to come more into the muscle without leveraging the joint. We don't really want to leverage a joint for support because over the long term that's not great for the joint. So we'd rather work a little bit of muscle to support the joint rather than locking out. So that's the piece there. Another one has to do with allowing the shoulders to dip very low in low push-up. So we see this in an action like this, when a student comes way below the elbows and then swoops up into upward dog. And so the concern here has to do with the impact of the head of the humerus on the muscles that support the shoulder joint, the rotator cuff primarily. And so the action of this pushing into this portion of the scapula over time can potentially cause some damage to those muscles. And then the last one is the action of, I'll do it this way, having students really focused on moving their shin forward in pigeon rather than keeping the integrity of the shape, knee in front of the hip, and moving more from the hip, even if it means their shin doesn't come up as far. And what's the concern there? Well, the knee joint is built more for flexion and extension. It does move side to side, the lower leg bone, but it's a lot more comfortable moving in that flex extend position. We can, of course, take it in that moving the lower leg side to side, right? You can see I can do that. But the joint that's more built to move in that side to side plane is the hip, because it's a ball and socket versus the hinge. And so this is why that old school cue of move the shin forward is really just asking people to hurt their knee. You know, as they don't have the requisite opening or ability to externally rotate in the hip, they'll just shove their knee or shove their shin forward, and that can potentially do some damage to the knee. So, you know, keep in mind when I say potentially do some damage, what I'm talking about is we don't know if it's going to in any of our students. It might. There's the multitude of issues that we need to take into consideration, like their physical conditioning, their body awareness, their experience in practice, if there's something brewing in their body that's just looking for the right conditions under which to create a problematic scenario from an injury perspective. So we really don't know. So that's all the more reason why we want to teach in a way that minimizes the risk to the group of people that we're working with and maximizes accessibility. And the more we understand about anatomy, the more we'll be able to provide sequencing that will do just that. The more we understand about anatomy, the more confident we'll be as teachers. We'll provide cues that are a lot more succinct and clear and understandable to a wide range of people. And the more we'll be inclined to stay away from artsy language that may sound great, right? Sometimes it sounds almost like poetry, but really isn't the best way to communicate with people when you're looking to communicate what are the key things to do, helpful things to do in this movement practice. So again, all this content comes from my yoga manual, which you can purchase on my website for $65. I'm recording this here on November, take a peek here, I can never remember the date, on November 15th, and I actually just recorded a webinar where I'm discounting this manual from $65 to $45, and in order to get it at a discount, all you need to do is send me an email, Karen@barebonesyoga.com. Let me know that you saw and heard about this discount on this video here, and there's only 10 of them. If you're eligible to get one, if I still have one left, I will send it to you for $45 instead of $65. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Again, my email address is Karen@barebonesyoga.com. On my website, which I'll include the link in the description here below, barebonesyoga.com, you'll find lots of free downloads which are applicable to yoga teaching and anatomy. So I want to thank you so much for watching and have a great night. Namaste.